Italian Football Podcast.
Let's move on in some sad news. So just before we started recording today, the news was confirmed that Silvio Berlusconi has died, aged 86, in Milan. He had recently spent 6 weeks in hospital at the San Raffaele Hospital, undergoing treatment for a lung infection, which was linked to him being. He's just recently been suffering with leukemia, and he was readmitted into hospital very recently in the last week, I think, or so. And unfortunately, sadly, he has passed away, aged 86. So, I mean, we're talking about an absolutely huge figure, not just in Italian football and in the football history of Milan, but in the history of the country of Italy in the last decades. And if we talk about from a football point of view, I mean, he was the owner of Milan from 1986 to 2017, and you cannot underestimate the impact that he had on Milan. He at the time of leaving Milan, selling Milan in 2017, he was the most successful president in the history of football anywhere in the world. 28 trophies.
Isn't it 29?
I don't know. I've seen some say 29. I counted 28, but I don't know if they're counting a little small trophy somewhere. But 28, 29. He was the most successful president in football history at the time. I'm not sure if Florentino Perez has overtaken him.
I think Florentino has overtaken him.
Yeah, he might have done since then. But at the time of leaving Milan in 2017, he was the most successful. And, what he did at Milan was unbelievable. I mean, he bought a club that was on the verge of bankruptcy. It's a club that had been, he bought them in 1986, as I said, but they'd been in Serie B. They'd twice been relegated into Serie B earlier on in the 80s. One for the match, the Totonero match fixing scandal. But then the second time actually was on merit. It was actually for the field of play for not being a very good football team. So he turned them into the best team in Italy within a couple of years. They won the 1988 Scudetto, and then he made them the best team in Europe in 1989 when they won the first European Cup of his tenure. And he built, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, the best club football team that we've ever seen in football history. I mean, his team that he had under Sacchi, Enrico Sacchi, the three Dutchmen, Van Basten, Rijkaard, and Hullet, and then that amazing all-Italian defence, Maldini, Baresi, Tassotti, Costagurta. I mean, for me, that's the best club team we've ever seen, and they won 2 European Cups in a row in 89 and 90, and it took almost 3 decades, I think it's from Madrid, for anyone else to win 2 in a row. And under Berlusconi, they reached 5 finals in 7 years during that spell, and in total, during his time in Milan, 8 Champions League finals at Milan, and winning 5 of them. And, so, I mean, the success that he brought to Milan was absolutely unbelievable, wasn't it, Nima?
Well, together on the football pitch, what he and Adriano Galliani and Braida did was truly, truly remarkable. They were, we got to keep it honest here, and intellectually honest here too. Before there were any, he was one of the first to really set in motion the wheels of what became the modern football Moneyball game of financial doping when there wasn't such a thing, when it was okay, completely legal.
When there were no rules,
There were no rules whatsoever. He was one of the first to set it in motion, and because of the fact that he used that success to launch his political career, becoming the Prime Minister of Italy for many, many years, becoming one of the longest serving Prime Ministers in Italian history, many other people opened their eyes to understanding what sports washing really was, and in football at least. I mean, of course, it existed before, but at this level, he was one of the instigators of that, and we should not be dishonest about that.
No, and we shouldn't be dishonest about obviously, you don't want to speak ill of the dead, not when they've
well, I do. I don't care.
You don't. In general, you don't want to speak ill of the dead in general. But he was mired in a lot of scandals, political scandals, sex scandals, underage bunga bunga parties, very shady business. I mean, the secret secret societies. I mean, you name it.
His connections to the Sicilian Cosa Nostra Mafia. I mean, just Google Vittorio Mangano. Just Google Marcello De Lutri, who these people were. I mean, Vittorio Mangano was hired. was officially hired as a gardener and a stableman at Berlusconi's Villa San Martino in Arcore, but he didn't do much gardening there. Let's just put it that way.
Well, maybe certain types of gardening.
Yeah,
maybe.
Well, exactly. A little trim,
depending on depending how deep you want to dig. Let's say,
exactly.
How far down the rabbit hole you want to go.
No, but seriously, like if you look into the people that he had connections with, if you look at him being convicted, how he used the Italian legislature and the government to harm the government by making Italian law so much more bizarre that we see the results of it now with statute of limitations, and using it for his own interests, is from a political point of view. And I'm not even talking about the sex scandals, because I know people love that stuff, but the other stuff I think that he did was far more bad, if we're perfectly honest. The fact that he made it okay to use the state to serve himself, and enrich himself privately. He was one of the first in the West to do that, so openly and blatantly and brazenly and unashamed, like just in your face. But if we, that's his
influence on Italian society for good and for bad. Television, for example. I mean, he was so far ahead of everyone in terms of, modern TV. Whether you like it or not, the way that he used sex to sell TV. I mean, you still see it today on Italian TV, Italian football TV. We still see it. You see. You have a talk show to talk about football, and you generally have a very attractive young model or showgirl or whatever you want to call her, that just basically sits there and looks nice. It sells. It sells. And that is he was a very big influence on that on that side of things. But he understood how to be successful, and. He was incredibly successful. If we want to look at the football side of things, yes, you're absolutely right. He spent heavily. I don't think it's comparable to, say, the level of spending that we see today in the Premier League, because back then there weren't rules in terms of financial fair play rules, but back then there were rules like there was 3 EU players, for example. You could only have 3 foreigners. Well, actually, at the start it was 2. In the 1980s, it was 2. Then they increased it to 3 in the late 80s. That means that you couldn't go out and just buy every single hoard and have all the best players in the world. It was impossible. You could only have the 3 best foreigners. You could still go out and buy the best Italian players, but all the big Italian clubs had riches back then. Yes, Berlusconi was the richest of them all, but they were all super rich. We saw the teams like Udinese buying Zico, Napoli buying Maradona. Milan were the best team in the best league that there's ever been. So back then, so it was still very impressive what he's done, and a lot more impressive than I don't think it's comparable to what football has become now with the Premier League. Because now there are no
rules. There are. Look, the principle is the same. The details are different. That's fair enough. But we shouldn't be hypocritical about that. He kind of started pretty much. He laid the groundwork for. He wrote the playbook for how you use football in the modern context to further a political agenda. He was
very big in the Champions League, the actual form.
He understood
of the Champions League.
That internationally it meant that he was one of the first to understand that, yes, okay, winning the Serie A is great, but when you do it on an international stage, when everyone is watching from all over the world, that's when it matters.
That's why he became such a big influence on Milan being the most successful Italian team in Europe, because there was that feeling, even in Italy at the time, for a long time, probably up until Berlusconi, where many people in Italy actually would rather win Serie A, winning the Scudetto, than winning the Champions League or the European Cup, as it was known then, because it was they considered that the bigger tournament, and Berlusconi kind of helped to change those attitudes, and And obviously Milan's success under him in the Champions League was just unbelievable. And they had so many great teams. I mean, not just that Sacchi team, but the Capello team that won the European Cup and reached 3 finals in a row. The Ancelotti team that reached 3 finals in 5 years. I mean, just name some of the players they had and some of the games, the legendary games. I mean, thrashing Real Madrid 5-0 in the 1989 European Cup semi-final at San Siro, the 4-0 over Steaua Bucharest in the final, the 4-0 over Cruyff's dream team in the 94 final in Athens, when everybody thought that Barcelona were gonna destroy Milan in that final. Milan were decimated in defence. They had no Baresi or Costa Curta. They come on and they destroy them 4-0. And then all the way down to beating Man United 3-0 in 2007. The 6-0 over Inter, Nima, which you probably want to forget. I mean, so many legendary games.
I haven't forgotten that at all. I mean, we got partly our revenge back on the Euro derby that Inter won now, because we lost a couple of Euro derbies against his Milan. And look, Milan were unbelievable then. There's no doubt about that. He built a structure. He understood the importance of media in sports. One of the first to do so. In the world, in football, in the footballing world. And that's why Milan have historically always been so good with the media and know how to get by, quote unquote, without paying positive coverage when you take care of every player.
It helps when your president is the prime minister.
Yes, but not just that. Even before that, this notion that understanding that if you buy a star from one country, that you have to have a relationship with the media of that.
No, absolutely. I'm just saying it helps when you've got the influence of being the prime minister or being controlling Italian TV.
Look, he said not just that, he controlled 90% of the Italian media at one point when he was in government. And also, let's remember that he used to say that when Milan wins on the weekend, parliamentary proceedings are far more easier on a Monday. This is who he was. He embodied that, and he lived it, and he didn't, and that's just, again, it's a complex character.
And some of the quotes he's come out with over the years as well. I mean, some of the stuff he's come up with, some of the videos of him. I mean, just Google Silvio Berlusconi quotes. I mean, there's so many.
There's so much stupid.
I don't know what is my favourite at all.
I think Pullman Pieno di Troia is out there. That one of his last ones with Monza.
Yes.
The bus full of prostitutes is.
If they beat Juventus,
they beat one of the big
teams. They beat them twice, didn't
Milan,
they? They beat them twice this season.
I'll turn up to the dressing room with a bus full of prostitutes. It's just unbelievably. It's just.
In this time of extreme political correctness that we're seeing, I don't think Berlusconi fits into this world very much. Some of the stuff that he's come out with. I remember when he said that the Chinese used to eat babies. Do you remember that?
He had to apologize for that. Yeah, he had to say, he said lots of racist.
Obama had a good tan. He said once. I remember that. I mean, he's come up with so much stuff. But from a footballing point of view, one of the giants of football, not just Italian football, one of the giants of all football. So, Silvio Berlusconi, aged 86, passed away today.